oh my God, are they going to get together? Are they going to get together on this page? Are they finally going to kiss?
Bookstahooda! Hello, I'm Sandy, and this is
Cherish
Charish.
from the Motley News and other things.
Yeah, today we are doing an author interview. It's my first. We're going to talk about Cherish's outcoming book. I'm so excited, and hopefully we know how to use Skype enough to do this. So, um, okay, so if you're watching this video, you probably know me and maybe Cherish from long, long ago, where we made videos about writing and reading and ABBA. So, but anything you want to add about, who you are, etc.?
Well, now my name is Charish Reid, so that's the one big change, I guess. And yeah, I write romance and I've got a book coming out. So and these are my ideas back here.
We'll blurt them out.
Many of them are unusable.
Here is the cover of Cherish's book, which she just released on Twitter, right? Or Instagram as well, kind of
Yeah,
everywhere. But
yeah.
wonderful and just
Cute.
it's so cute. Um, okay, so that's available for pre-order on basically everything, right? As an ebook.
Yeah,
Okay.
everything.
So I thought I would start asking you about um your writing journey. Like you used to be you wanted to start with travel writing, which I mean I know you
Mhm.
used to read travel-ish books. I don't know what they're called. And
Yeah.
now you're living in Sweden. How is that changing the way you write?
Well, I think I really wanted to be a travel writer when we were in grad school together
Mhm.
because it just felt like I guess a rebellion against what we were learning.
That's true.
And I felt like I don't want to do academic writing. I want to do things that are going to be read by the masses.
Yeah.
And obviously, I wanted to travel, and obviously, I thought I would be really good at it. But the thing about travel writing is like you gotta go places.
Right.
So,
Just stay where you are.
and Noah and I at the moment were too poor to go anywhere. And but I don't know, like a good travel writer worth their salt could take a trip to Illinois and make it interesting.
Mhm.
I don't think I was there yet, but like as far as writing journey goes, I mean, I've written stuff since I was a teenager. I'm not one of those prodigies who's like, I wrote my first screenplay at age 5.
Yeah.
Um, no, I was a dummy as a kid. But I read all the time, and I definitely started writing when I was maybe 15 or 16, and I was super dramatic about everything that I wrote. Like, you have to read it, even though all of it's fan fiction.
What I know you wrote fan fiction for Interview with the Vampire, right? Uh, what did you write any other fan fiction?
It was all vampire fan fiction. It was terrible. No, that's not true. It wasn't terrible. It was actually okay.
Yeah.
Like if I read it today, I would be like, oh,
This is
but then
fun.
also, oh. Yeah, I guess that's the long and short of writing journey. I don't think I took seriously writing romance until like when we started writing together. I
Mm.
love romance, but I I don't know, I've been kind of slow about it. And so when you and I said we're writing stuff together solidly,
Mhm.
that's when I was like, let's do this.
That was NaNoWriMo 2 years ago, which is crazy. I've wanted to ask you this off camera too, but like, why did you decide to write romance? I know you love reading it, but I mean, is that why you wanted to write it too?
Uh, you know what? I was such a lonely, horny teenager, just in love with everything and everybody.
Mhm.
And I would like, I think I pretended that all 5 members of the Backstreet Boys were my boyfriend, like once a week. We'd switch off, of
Mhm.
course.
They
Uh,
were okay with it.
they had to be.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know, I've always loved love stories. I've loved imagining, this sounds so corny. I love imagining love situations. All the tropes are so entertaining to me. Movies that portray like really fun, happy-go-lucky love. I've always been a sucker for either a good Lifetime movie or a rom-com, like preferably something from the 90s to early 2000s. I think that was probably the golden era of the rom-com.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the movies really influenced me, and I always thought, damn, I wish I could write one of these movies.
Mhm.
And I think writing the books is just as fantastic because they're also something that you can pick up again and read, and it's like a warm blanket, you know? I've always loved a good, happy escape because the world's just incredibly shitty, like all the time.
Yeah.
And and I like the fact that in these narratives, like women can kind of write their own destiny and have a nice ending and don't get punished for like wanting to have sex or, you know, the guy is always good for them. And that's something that you know, I want to mirror
Mhm.
in my writing and in real life. Like, I want everybody to have a happily ever after. I think when you write romance, people discount romance as something as throwaway and fluffy.
Mhm.
But for some women, it could show them, like, this is how a man is supposed to treat you,
Right.
and this is how you can be happy. Does that sound preachy?
Not really. I mean, it's growing up as I did, fantasy, my chosen genre was looked down in a similar way of like, oh, you don't ever get into anything real in that. It's just escapism. But actually, the I think in romance too, because it's kind of a heightened reality, it lets the you get to explore topics that are real, but with barrier like fantasy elements or romance elements that make it
Yeah.
not as like it's not depressing and sad, but you still get to learn things and you get to experience
Yeah.
things differently. And so yeah, I think that makes sense.
Oh, there's still, the canon is great and everything,
Mhm.
but we don't have to live our lives by it. We are actually allowed to enjoy some stuff, and not all reading should feel like it's mandatory or a chore or,
Right.
I'm talking to the wrong person. We both went to grad school.
Right. We know all of these things. We went to grad school and immediately fled grad school.
I know. It
Yeah.
didn't take with us.
No. You always open my eyes to new perspectives about everything, is when we talk about anything, but especially writing in romance. And is there, I mean, we kind of already touched on this, but is there anything that you want to bring to romance? Like being an academic and a Black woman, is that like, I know
Yeah,
that's a void you're trying to fill, right?
I think it is. My agent told me that that's my brand now. so so I got to do it.
Yeah.
Um, no, like first of all, I noticed that in general nobody really talks about Black women in academia. And as a person who writes about racism and feminism and political stuff, like this would be an opportunity for me to highlight Black women are in academia. We roll kind of deep, and there are many facets to us, you know. We're not just like trying to do the job. We have fun, and I like writing about academia because my husband and I were fully entrenched in it, no matter what we do, If I'm not teaching, he certainly is. And um, I guess I just wanted to poke fun at some of the things that go on in academia, but I
Mhm.
also wanted to make it sexy, which nobody thinks it is.
It needs help.
It needs like a PR.
Right.
So it needs some fluffing up a little bit. And I think I'm trying to do it in a way that's funny and like lighthearted and cute and sexy. And you let me know in a few months if I'm accomplishing this, readers out there. But yeah, like I belong to a Facebook group about, women of color in academia, and most of the posts are like, you know, this frustrating thing happened to me at the office, and could I have some advice on how to deal with it, because I'm a woman of color. I'm not seen as somebody who has any authority. Um, and every once in a while those posts are punctuated by something nice, like, oh, I'm getting tenure. But the
Oh,
majority of it is like, I've just had a shitty day. And I think it's because, they don't take me seriously.
right.
I think in my world, my romance world, I want to make sure that like all of these gals get theirs.
Hmm.
And sometimes the men are professors too.
Right. That does seem to be, I mean, it's still, even to me, having been in academia, like when I think of sexy professor, the first thing that comes to mind is like a studly guy professor. Like it's not a sexy woman professor who has her shit together. So I like that you're twisting that. Um,
I'm I'm doing the sexy professor is a man in my first book, The Right
mhm,
Escape. The second one, however, I am flipping it.
right.
And rest assured, all of them have problems. Like, there's nothing perfect about them. But they are like really interesting and funny, I hope, and
Mhm.
charismatic.
You're a debut author, but I mean, and you're still months away from debuting.
So long.
Yeah. But you've managed to like I know because I'm trying to be an author too that to be an author now and be successful, you have to have a platform and, like build your platform. And you're doing so well at it. I mean, you've attracted attention from even Beverly Jenkins, which is just like, what? Um, and I think part of that is the fact that you are not afraid to speak your mind. Like, no matter what you're talking about, you are just going to lay it how it is. And um, are you always like not afraid of trolls, or do you just, I mean, that's just part of life, I guess, but
Oh,
especially the internet. How do
no,
you
I'm
get
I'm
ready?
deathly afraid of trolls.
Oh, it doesn't seem like that at all. Like,
I'm afraid of trolls and getting canceled. Like,
oh, yeah,
like
okay.
those are my. But I know what you mean. I think I've just always had the um I feel like it's the obligation to be like, hey, listen to me.
Mhm.
And I think that comes from being a kid. I was just always like, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. What are you up to? Like all of my report cards said, like, Cherish has potential if she would just stop talking to her neighbor.
Well, they're wrong because you're using that skill to your advantage.
And I think that's it, really. It's temperament, I suppose. I don't think I'm doing anything like outrageously different from the next person. I think it's just the desire to talk to people and make new friends, um and take a chance, I guess, because like at the end of the day, what do you really have left to lose? No,
Mhm.
that sounds desperate. What 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 do you have to lose if like you reach out to someone like Beverly Jenkins and she doesn't say anything? You're not going to die.
Right, you're in the same spot you were before. In this big move, people watching, I have a giant collection of books. And Cherish had to, I mean,
Oh,
yeah, she and her husband had a similar, or had a similar collection size. And to move to Sweden, you had to get rid of almost all your books. And I just like, even the thought of that, my heart rate is probably like 30 beats higher than normal because I can't think about it. How did you decide which to keep? And like, was it traumatic? Like,
It is traumatic. It still is. I'm so
yeah.
triggered. Like, let's see. I I think the stack of books that I have is maybe yay high
Yeah.
currently. And I brought 10 books with me.
Okay.
Noah brought 10 books.
Oh, geez.
And Jesus, I brought romance craft books,
Hmm.
like to help me with editing and stuff like that. And then I brought a book of poems that my best friend Evan wrote back when he was in grad school because he signed it and they're really good poems. I brought The Invisible Man, or Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man,
Mhm.
and maybe like a couple of other important literary reads. Now I can't remember them off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of my question because I just read an article where it's being a bookish person is about, I mean, there's a kind of a disconnect between owning books and having read books. And I'm really, I'm thinking about cultivating my collection. Like, do I really need these? Have these already served all the purpose they're going to serve for me? But there are so many of these that I may never read again, but I'm, like it's a part of me. And if I give
Yeah,
it away, what does that do? Um,
it's
so
really complicated.
yeah, so I guess you did choose like certain editions that were very special to you, and then it's how much of a book is an object and how much of is it already in you, and like I can let this go. I don't need the physical representation of it. I don't know.
Right. And yeah, you make it sound really philosophical. I think I was just frightened and anxious and throwing away a ton of books.
Right.
Um,
'Cause you had to,
I
like,
think I think looking back on it, there were a couple of Z.D. Smith books that I probably should have kept,
mm.
and I feel really dumb about that. I don't think I had a real system going.
Okay.
I think we're just kind of like in a panic,
Yeah.
and there were some books that just called to me a little bit more.
Mhm.
And if it was down from your collection down to 10 books, like
Ah.
nothing really made sense. We were just
Right. I mean,
I think it just takes like a dramatic shift to make someone like you or I change our minds.
mhm.
Because if you had to go through it too, you would be, I think, upset for
Yeah,
one.
I honestly don't know. Like, yeah, I honestly don't know which ones I would keep. I mean, or no, I would want to keep so many of them. Like, but I think I would end up like you, choosing a few special, like limited edition or signed books
You'll
and
know.
craft books. Like that would,
Yeah,
because those are what I really need right now. The rest of
right.
them, most of them are replaceable, but there
Yeah.
are that aren't. So that's, oh, okay.
Well, I have a ton of stuff on my Kindle, so that makes up for it.
That's something I didn't script, but this is an interesting question. Because I am a person who loves owning physical books,
Mm,
mostly because I love holding them and having them, but also being able to write in them. Um,
yeah.
how how does that change the way you read? And also, as an author who's going to be first, at least only ebook for
Mm.
now, um, how do you feel about that? Like,
Well, I think for romance as a genre, it's like high consumption.
mhm,
So readers are one-click purchasing rapidly, and
right.
they'll go through these books so quickly,
Mhm.
as have I, really. I mean, I've read way more romance out here in Sweden, basically because my time is freed up a little bit more. But I just one click buy. It's so easy. And I don't know, I guess the industry makes it easy. I don't know if there's another genre where you can consume quite as much quickly. I don't know if fantasy is quite like that. People tend to really like their physical copies of fantasy
That's true.
because they're huger.
That usually they are mostly because of the world building. With romance, I have noticed that. I mean, you said you read three Tessa Dare books in one weekend. Like, how many pages are those? How quick can you go through them? You know?
They are three 350 to 380 pages, I think.
Okay.
And with the formula that romance has, you just kind of know where everything is supposed to go when it's supposed to be there.
Mhm.
And her books are so funny, and the heroines are like so cute. And the adventures and the shenanigans that they get into, I don't know, it just made it. I may have been depressed that weekend too. But it makes it so much easier just to kind of get swept away.
Mhm.
And um, obviously, that's the mark of a good writer, where you're just like, you know, calling from the bedroom, you come hear this. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like the formula
Mhm.
works.
Okay.
People have genre expectations. They
Yeah.
know what they want, and if you're not hitting those expectations, um, well, that's, I guess, another story. But there are expectations that the reader have, and they go through the books rather quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I know I do.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I it has happened to me too, where because romance books, like I have a little section down here where so where is the one? I don't know if I've read this one yet, but I read one of the other books in this series called Searching for Beautiful, I think instead. I read it on ebook and it's similar length, but I read it in like a day and a half. If this was a
Yeah.
fantasy book, it would have taken me like a week or two. And it's not that the words are all that much like there's not a reading difficulty level. I'm maybe
Yeah.
I just because of the formula I don't have to stop and like absorb the plot because I know where it's going, but that doesn't make it any less worth reading. It's
No. And I feel like you're looking for the love.
right.
Like, oh my God, are they gonna get together? Are they gonna get together on this page? Are they finally gonna kiss? Like, are they finally gonna make out? Are they finally gonna have sex? And then you're waiting on like, oh my God, but what's gonna break them up?
Right.
And so, I mean, the formula is basically the same, but every author has a different way of doing it
Hmm.
well or interesting.
Yeah.
And I think we're just looking for the relationship to solidify
Mhm.
and to say that for someone to say, I love you. And along the way, it's really exciting, I think.
What is your if every author does it differently, what is the Cherish Reid difference? You know, what does
Oh,
a
God.
reader who's going to pick up your book get that you might not get in a Jennifer Probst or I don't
Yeah. Oh, so I guess one of the characters has to have an issue with their mom.
know. Everyone knows, everyone can understand that.
Either meddling mom or deranged mom or
Mhm.
obnoxious mom. Sometimes there's nice moms, don't get me wrong,
Is
but
in the draft of the Raid Escape that I read, Aiden's mom is like lovely and adorable. Is she still lovely and adorable in the
oh,
final
she
draft?
is. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, good, because I really liked
yeah.
her.
She's she's based on Noah's mom. Let's see. Yeah, the academics,
Mhm.
somebody is going to be working for a university in some capacity.
Mhm.
There might be a rabbit. There might be
Yeah.
references to rabbits in every book. Um, there's probably going to be a reference to books or writing. Actually, I don't want to overplay the whole writing thing. I don't want to be Stephen King.
Yeah.
All of my male characters, I'm hoping that I'm getting to the point. I've only finished the second book, but I kind of want to make all of my male characters teddy bears or cinnamon buns or whatever we call them.
Yeah.
Just like just super supportive and super confused by the lady, but willing to stick through it.
Hmm.
So I guess
Yeah.
that would be the taxonomy of a Cherish Reid book.
Perfect. I keep wanting to go like a Cherish Reid read
Mm.
because I'm terrible and love puns. So I have a question of like what you said you brought romance craft books with you. Is there one that you would recommend to a romance writer, or which one helped you the most? Something like that.
Yeah, I have a couple of those books where you have like Romance the Source series, and those have been really helpful for jazzing up the sexy words
Mm.
and body parts. Because you can't keep saying tits.
Yeah.
Um, and Romancing the Beat, which you've already heard about, but that's basically the structural part of a romance novel. And I can't remember who wrote that, but it's super, super popular and very helpful. And it's just like, I think 20 beats of where
Hmm.
the book should go.
Hmm.
And I hold on to that one dearly because I still use it. Like, I need a structural plan to
Hmm.
get me going, and I need to know, like, where exactly is this going, how is this going to end?
Hmm.
Um, and then along the way, I kind of fill in the skeleton, you know? Yeah, and I've noticed that romancing the beat is not all too different from like a hero's journey. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's relatively the same
Right. Like if a
ish.
romance journey was the hero, then it sort
Right.
of goes through the same trajectory. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say about your upcoming book or audiobook books? Because you've got a second one
Uh,
in the works.
yeah. So the first one called The Right Escape, which is currently through copy edits, like right now.
Woo.
That one will be released September 30th.
Okay.
The publisher is Carina Press, and that's an imprint, ebook imprint of Harlequin. So, yeah.
I know. Harlequin, romance writer.
And that will be an ebook. I don't know how that will work in the future with my second book. Um, I don't know if it's based on sales or popularity or whatever, but for now, that one's going to be an ebook. It's a contemporary, multicultural, contemporary adult romance. It's set in Ireland. As you know, it's just about a woman who's trying to keep her shit together,
Mhm.
who's from Chicago and has just is quickly losing her mind with the loss of her job, her awful fiance, and says, "Fuck it all. I've got to take this solo honeymoon anyway."
Mhm.
And she goes to Ireland and she meets Dr. Aidan Burns, and he's a professor, of course. And it's like, let's see, what are the tropes? We've got a little bit of forced proximity because they do have cabins right next to each other in a tiny, tiny town.
Mhm.
So, in the village of Tullycross, their vacation cottages, they're right next to each other. So every time she pops out, there he is,
Mhm.
and so forth. So they kind of have no choice but to get to know each other, and it turns out that that's quite pleasurable. And they help each other through some drama,
Mhm.
and people can read about the drama. But at the end of the day, like Antonia Harper, which is the main character, she goes to Ireland, she finds herself, she finds love. And I think that's the travel writing experience that I wanted to write for a young Black woman
Mhm.
who's trying to keep her shit together.
Yeah.
Um, like when Noah and I went to Ireland 2 years ago,
Mhm.
I originally wanted to do travel writing about that experience because we were
Mhm.
there for like a month.
Mhm.
And then I was like, no, I think I just want to write a really nice romance
Mhm.
about like a Black girl getting hers. You know? I pitched it as Leap Year for Black girls.
Which
And
is a wonderful movie.
yeah.
I love it. If
Did you want me to talk about the second book?
if you want to,
It doesn't come out until February, so
right. So under a year, how are you finished with the rough draft at least, right? Are you getting your um what's happening with that?
uh I gave it to my agent. She loved it. I've given it to the editor.
Mhm.
She is reading it for developmental edits.
Okay.
So that's like the stage where they will rearrange, they'll ask you to rearrange things if, plot issues, plot holes, or timelines are weird or funky. Um, so I'm hoping that since it's my second time around, the developmental edits aren't going to last for like 2 rounds.
That was one of my earlier questions I sort of skirted by. As a professional, like now that you're a professional author, what's been the most surprising part of that process, or hardest, or something?
Yeah, I think humility. Like, just because somebody signed on to take your thing does not mean that it doesn't need a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
And once I saw how much work needed to go into the process to get it absolutely perfect, it made me feel like, oh shit, why did they even take this on in the first place? Makes you feel like, okay, there's nothing Hollywood about being an author.
Mm,
Like it still requires so much work on your behalf.
mm.
And your second draft, you might think it's stellar. And your third draft, you think you might be getting it together. No, somebody will always tell you, but does this really make sense? And why would this be here? And then you have to look at yourself and say, okay, I always need work. You
Mm.
know, my writing always needs work. Um, I've been humbled by this experience.
Yeah.
Not to say that it isn't super exciting still,
Mhm.
because I feel like, this is a big deal.
It
Uh,
is.
but it's still so much work.
Yeah.
The work that no one really told you about. And I think that's the thing about publishing or getting into the industry is it's kind of secretive and you're kind of afraid to ask these questions. And like, um, so I was just kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I should ask that question or else I'll sound like a newbie or
Right.
I don't know what I'm doing. Well, guess what? Nobody knows what they're doing until someone like an editor tells you.
Mhm.
And I think that makes people feel really nervous.
Yeah.
Ask questions, no matter how, dumb you think they are,
Mhm.
because it is kind of cloaked in a lot of secrecy. I think so.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, Cherish. Her debut novel, The Right Escape, is up for pre-order everywhere. I will try to put links in the description box.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Uh, I mean, as far as first interviews go on video, I'm glad it was with you.
thank you. I'm very honored and just so excited and proud of you. So yay!
Thanks.
Okay. Uh, till next time. Bookstahooda!
Bye.